The secret to a successful landscape painting. Hi everybody, I'm Ken Brant and I'm an artist. I hope this video finds everybody at home safe and healthy. So you want to paint a landscape painting, but you want to make sure it's a successful landscape painting. Well, there are several things that one can do to accomplish this, and one of them is to know the values within your scene that you are painting. This is key because we always want to make sure that our darkest darks and our lightest lights are truly represented within the landscape that we're painting. And if you do not have those values correct, the brain of the viewer will always know something is not quite right. Even if we've never seen a photo of the scene that the artist has painted, there's always certain things that need to be specific values. So always keep in mind when you're painting a landscape, the lightest usually, and I'm going to say usually here because there's always exceptions to every rule, but the lightest light is usually going to be the sky. That will be the lightest value in your painting. So when you are setting up your painting and you're putting in your colors, you want to make sure that usually, and it's the case with myself, I'll put the sky in first because I know that everything else is going to be offset to that value. So I know that sky's going to be light, so everything else that I paint should be slightly darker. But what is the next lightest value within that painting? Normally, again, I say, you know, there's always exceptions to every rule. So, but these are the basic rules in which one should follow when doing the, you know, a landscape painting. The second lightest value in your painting will be any flat surface. And a lot of beginners usually get this incorrect, especially when they're painting a waterfall. You'll always see that the color of the waterfall, they'll use a fan brush and they'll paint that waterfall and the whole waterfall is all one value. And that's just not the way it is in nature. They make for interesting paintings, but if you're trying to do something, if you're trying to paint something realistic looking, or not even realistic, but just to represent truly what it is that you're trying to paint, then you want to get those values correct. So usually any flat surface will be the second lightest value in your painting. The next thing that and obviously from that you're going to go to your darkest value, and usually the darkest value in your painting will be any vertical surface within that painting. So, you know, the side of the barn, the side of a tree, these are going to be areas within your painting that will have the darkest value. And as long as you get those values correct, the viewer will see these items when they're looking at your painting, and their brain will interpret it correctly, and they'll see what it is that you're trying to paint. The next thing that a lot of artists don't know, and it's not that they don't exactly know it, but they don't paint it correctly, is atmosphere. One of the key secrets to painting a successful landscape is getting the atmosphere correct within that painting. And you have to understand that the farther away things are, the more air is in between you and that object. So, and there's going to be a lot of things within the air that, you know, pollution and pollen and just nature itself creates this barrier between you and the object that you're looking at in a far distance, you know, far away. And it creates a filter. And what ends up happening is that filter degrades the amount of light that you see between you and that object. And when I say light, I'm talking about like if you take a prism and you have light shining through that prism, and you look at the reflection of that light, you see the colors of the rainbow within that prism. That filter degrades that light, so the farther away, the less color you're going to see, and the first color that gets eliminated out of that spectrum is yellow. So anything that has the color yellow in it, you will not see due to atmosphere between you and the object you're painting. So greens will not exist in an object far, far away. Even though there's grass and trees, you're not going to see any greens because green is blue and yellow. So if you remove the yellow, what do you have? You have blue. And a lot of times what a lot of painters will do, you'll notice a lot of mountains in the distance have a bluish or purplish hue to it. And that is why, because the color yellow is gone. And obviously, as things get closer and closer, they get sharper and sharper, and you're going to see crisper colors. Your color yellow comes back, so your greens become vibrant, your blues become much darker, and your reds as well. Your reds become much brighter. So these are the things that you must keep in mind when you're painting objects far, far away. And just like anything else, in my last video I brought this up, and it's not so much that artists don't know about it. I just don't believe they incorporate it correctly within their painting, and that is the composition. Now, when you're looking at a landscape, you're looking at the whole thing. I mean, you're talking, you know, like those cameras that take those panoramic views, there's a lot of information in there. So how do you condense that down into something that looks pleasant to the eye? You know, you want the viewer to be drawn into the area that you see that you want to paint, whether it's, you know, the way the light is hitting something specifically, or just the way something looks. A fallen tree with all kinds of gnarly branches, and you think is really cool, and you want to paint that. You want your viewer to see that as well and enjoy the nuances that you saw and you've painted. So how do you get all of that information into your painting? Well, in composition, you're the artist, and no one knows exactly what your landscape looks like unless you supply a photo of it with your painting, and nobody does that. So the only scene that the viewer sees is what you painted. If there was a tree in real life and you didn't paint it, they will never know that that tree doesn't exist, unless it's somebody that's familiar with the area that you painted. But even then, chances are they aren't going to notice it if it's done correctly. So you should be able to add and remove things out of your painting to enhance your composition. And one of the secrets to that is never put anything directly in the middle on your canvas. You know, don't put that tree directly in the center of your canvas. If there is a way the light is hitting on a certain object in your scenery and you like the way that light looks, don't put that focal point directly in the center of your canvas. You use the rule of thirds, move it off to the right, move it off to the left, but use 1/3 of your canvas, whether it's the right or left side, upper or lower section of your canvas. Make sure you utilize those thirds. Put that particular item of interest, that area of interest, if you will, in one of those third areas. And this will always make your composition a much more pleasing composition to the viewer. And that is one of the keys to a successful oil painting. Or not just necessarily an oil painting, but any kind of painting. And another secret to a successful painting, landscape painting, is to vary your greens. Greens are tough. I have a difficult time with the greens myself, and that is only because it's hard because a lot of times I don't know which color blue and yellow I'm going to use to manufacture that particular green. I have used the green directly out of the tube, but even then it doesn't necessarily match the scenery that's in front of me. So I have to mix my blues and my yellows to get that green as close as possible to what I'm seeing. And so you need to pay attention to the temperature of those greens. Is that green leaning more towards a red, or is that green leaning more towards a blue? And that will be a huge difference in how that green looks. And you want a variation of both warm and cool greens within your scenery. And I think that's going to make your landscape much, much more interesting. And just like you need to vary your greens, you need to vary your brush strokes as well. You don't want every single tree in your landscape to look exactly the same. That's just not how nature is. Oaks have a particular look to it, elms have a particular look to it, birches are a much different looking tree, and they all have different leaves, and they all look different, and some have yellowish hues to the green, some have more of a reddish hue to the green. So you need to vary your greens, vary your brush style. Those items right there, those techniques will lead to a much more successful landscape painting. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comment section down below. I answer all comments, or at least I respond to all comments. If it's not a question, I still respond. And again, I hope everyone is being safe and healthy out there. And until the next video, I'll see you.